Hello everyone, I'm here today with a new video and this one is a flip through. What you're seeing here is my Springfield album. It's all 3x8 and I'm about halfway. I think it's actually a little bit more than half, but about halfway. So you'll get to see all of that today. And here we are with my opening page. I kept it very simple. I just printed this photo on cardstock. Actually, I chose not to do it on photo paper. So I did it on cardstock. I wanted it a little bit more weathered looking, a little washed out, a little grainy maybe. And then I just put the city code on there for the train station, a little geotag, did my dates, and that was enough to get me started. On the next page, I wanted to just kind of give a little look at what someone could expect to see when they're going through this album. So I checked off the applicable things here that I know will be in here. I could go back and maybe check off more later after I finish the other pages if I want, but for now it's going to stay like this. And I had picked up this sticker in one of the gift shops. I don't remember which one, but I liked it because it was very American looking, very red, white, and blue, which is perfect for an album like this. And then here I just wanted to show my waiting around time when I was at the airport, because I flew to Chicago and then took the train from Chicago to Springfield, because really it's kind of hard to get there directly. So that was the easiest way for me to do it. And the flights to Chicago were super cheap for me, so made sense to do it that way. And so here I am just having some caribou tea, lemonade / tea, when I was sitting in the airport. And I just did a lot of stamping there. Really, there wasn't much to it. And then here I am boarding my flight. So you can see I had an evening flight. I left at 5 o'clock, and that was fine because I could work pretty much a full day and not have to take PTO and then be able to do this, which is awesome. So boarded my flight. It landed at 7:20. I didn't do a whole lot here either, just some stamping, piece of chipboard, a fun puffy sticker that happened to be orange, which matches my plane, so that's great. Journaling. I mean, that's it. Nothing, it's not rocket science here at the start. When I got to Chicago, it was fairly late because it takes like 45 minutes to get from O'Hare to where I was staying. You take the blue line the whole way, but it's still, it's a ways. By that time, I'm like, you know what? It's dark. I worked all day. I'm tired. I'm just going to hang out in my room. So that's what you're seeing here. And then I was up in the morning, not super early, but fairly early, to catch my train. And so there really wasn't a whole lot happening. So these may seem like pretty ordinary. They are, because it was kind of, an ordinary night and early morning before departure. Then I was at the train station. I have lots of photos of Union Station because I'm there quite a bit, so I chose not to put those in again. I just got right on the train. And this was a new train line that I've never taken, the Missouri River Runner line that goes from Chicago and it goes to Springfield, obviously, but then it goes on even further and eventually goes all the way to Kansas City. So that's kind of a new experience and a new set of cars that I had never been in. These were pretty much brand new, which was awesome because everything was super clean and comfortable, and they have new digital displays, which none of the other trains really have, at least not in the Midwest. When I got to Springfield, I went right to kind of the Central Square area. This is the old train station. It's much nicer, actually, than the current train station. The current train station is pretty boring. You'll see it at the end, but trust me, not a fancy building, not anything compared to this in terms of architecture. So it's sad that they stopped using this one. I just put a tab on there, and then I do have a flip up that tells you some of the history of Union Station because I didn't want to forget that, so I wanted to include that there. And then right in the middle of the square, there's this statue of Abraham Lincoln. So I for sure had to get that since he's the whole reason that I took the trip. And then I just took a picture of the plaque and included that. A bunch of just, little pieces of ephemera, really, and then some enamel dots. I have so many enamel dots, and sometimes I just forget to use them, and then they build up and I have just a ton. And so I really made an effort to use some here rather than just letting them sit in my stash all the time. And I did a little tab here, and once again, you can lift up, and this explains this particular art piece here. And it's because they had a race riot in Springfield. Kind of ironic considering that's where Lincoln's from, and, you know, his political career, what he fought for. And so it was just a very interesting and moving thing to see. And so I also wanted to keep all the information about that. When I was done there, right on the other side of that central square area is the Presidential Library and Museum. And so I went there next. And again, I kept this very, very simple here and just did some stamping down there. This was a clear acetate piece, and I just put this label on top. So I didn't even have to like put a staple in or anything. I just used a little bit of mono adhesive there, and that was all it needed. So I do have to say I did skip one layout in this first half, and that's because I'm not sure what's going on with it, but I'm having a little problem with my fuse tool lately. It certainly seems to me like it's taking twice the amount of time to heat up than it normally does. So I don't know if that means it's going to die and I'm going to have to buy another one, or I always have it plugged into a surge protector. It's never been a problem, but I'm wondering if now for some reason it's not getting the power that it needs. But in any case, I skipped this. There will be sequins in here eventually, so when I finish this one, you'll see that. But for right now, that's going to have to wait till I figure out that issue. But then next to this, these are meant to kind of match together. Next to this, I have part of the exhibit that was in the Presidential Library. So there you can see I did some stamping there, very simple. And again, I wanted to include all the details. I feel like when I take pictures like this, it makes more sense to do it this way than to like handwrite that as journaling. Why would I do that if it's already right there? So it's kind of saving myself a step really by not having to reiterate that information when it's already there. So maybe that's kind of the cheater's way, but that's the way I choose to do it. And then I did a little bit more stamping down here. There's actually a lot of stamping in this album. You're probably going to notice. And then more stamping. What a surprise. There were some art pieces out in it's kind of like a side gallery off the main part of the library and museum, mostly on the library side here. And some of the pieces were quite interesting. Some of them didn't really speak to me, but these two I really liked, this one being my favorite, and so that's why I did that stamping. And then here, this was just part of a bag that I got because I bought stuff in the gift shop, and they had this logo on the front, and I thought, well, it's a little bit, too big to fit in a 3x8, but I could cut it down and maybe that might be okay. And I did have to lose, a little bit on top, but I was able to get the signature and then get the name in there. And I think that's pretty good. So once I was done on that section, then I went over to the museum section. And I will say, I wrote about it here. I didn't like the wax figures. I get like that they want a representation in there and stuff, but I always find wax figures creepy. I don't really care for them. So other than that, it was great, but I could have skipped that part, but this is like right in front. You can't miss it when you walk in there. So I did use them. And again, I did more stamping, lots of that happening. And then over here, I just did a little bit of writing about it. And then they had this painting there that really struck me. It's more of a modern style, but I feel like it really reflects him very well, like better than some of the other pieces I've seen, like his facial features and the look in his eyes. It's very intense. I really was impressed by that. One of the other things you can see in the museum is a replica of the log cabin where Lincoln grew up inside with a bunch of other people, really no privacy, no space of one's own. I give him credit because I think I'd go out of my mind if I had to live like that. But he was able to do it, and so it just gives some information about that experience, and then you get a sense of really what those conditions were like and how small that space really was. More stamping. So shocking. And then these were other just displays that they had. This was talking about basically the first money that he ever earned when he was still a youngster, and what an impression that made on him, that if you work hard, you earn money for that. And that lesson, stayed with him. And then he ran a general store for a while, and so there were just some figures and some information about that as well. And then I wanted to include pictures about his election, because it's not like now where basically it's two parties, two people, and, it's however that splits out. Back then, that was not the case. You can kind of see the pie chart here of how many different candidates there were, and Lincoln really didn't win by that much. There definitely were other candidates that people were considering, and it wasn't a landslide victory by any means. So it was kind of contentious from the start, and I guess I didn't quite remember that from my history lessons, or maybe we were never told that. So I found that very interesting. I wanted to showcase that. And then this is just people kind of watching, for the election. And I just did a big label there. And then this is the story of one of their sons actually died while they were living at the White House. And this is the story of that. It's very sad, but I didn't want to forget the historical information. So again, I just took a picture of that and included it. And all I did was just one little label, and that's it. And these next layouts, these were interesting because you wouldn't think like this is that important in the grand scheme of things, but there was a lot of information about Lincoln's wife, and she spent a lot of money, and that kind of didn't sit well with him sometimes and got them into trouble with their finances. And she, wanted to have beautiful dresses because she had to keep up with society. That was expected of women back then too. And so they had some dresses on display and stories about, why this was the case, where like you had to keep up appearances, you have to kind of go about with the upper echelon of society and all of that, which I found very interesting. And then it was back to a lot of more of the political stuff. And I didn't want to do too much with these because I really wanted them to stand out on their own. I may go back and do a label or something there, but nothing really jumped out at me. And so I thought, you know what, this is quite powerful on its own, so I'm just going to leave it. And then I did all my decorating on this side instead. And again, this was a sticker that I found in one of the gift shops. This might have been at the actual museum here. There were several gift shops, but I think it was probably in theirs. And I just loved all the words that were in it and the look of it. And so I decided to kind of just make that its own page. And I just did some stickers here. It was a strip, and I just cut it to fit. I used that, and then I did some ink splattering, and that's it. And then we're kind of getting to the end of the museum stuff here, but I wanted to put in a copy here of the Emancipation Proclamation, because that was so central to his presidency and who he was and what he's known for. So I wanted to put that in there. I just did a little acetate star. I have a bunch of museum phrases and labels, so I used a lot of those here. So I have one here, I have another one here. This shows Lee's surrender, and then there's a little tab so you know to flip up. I had this, it was actually on like a mini bag, and I cut this out. I fussy cut it, put it on here, and once again, stamping. And these stamps are for something completely different, but they work in this context. So I decided I'm going to use them. And then this is right before he was assassinated. So it's, interesting juxtaposition with all of this and the way in which things happened. And then after that, I was ready to go to my Airbnb for the night because I had already crammed in a lot that day between travel and then doing all the things that I did. So I did include a layout here of my Airbnb. I loved the neighborhood. This was a church that was right on the corner of my street, so I passed it every time I was coming and going. So I wanted to put that in there. And I just talked a little bit about the neighborhood. I did stamping in here. Luckily, I had some like local love, I think it's called, stamps, and it worked out very well for that. Did some other stamping right here showcasing the beautiful driveway that they had. And then this was where I stayed, Hermit's Hideaway, and this was my door right here. And I just loved the whole feel. It was very cozy, very chill. That was the whole vibe there. And so I definitely wanted that to make it into my album. So there you go. That's the first half. Hopefully you've enjoyed seeing that. Maybe it'll inspire you to go to Springfield at some point. And I hope you will stick around for part 2. Thanks for watching.